Coming to you live from Johannesburg, this is Fridays with Tim Modise. Tonight, several government offices and institutions are ignoring the public protector's recommendations, and we ask, how does this affect Busisiswe Mkhwebane's office? We ask why Robert McBride is battling to stay on as head of IPID. Also, we'll be finding out how the future of work can be protected in a fast-changing world. And the National Council of Provinces will vote on 2 bills protecting actors' royalties. We'll tell you what that's all about, but you can call us on 011-759-6340 or use the hashtag Fridays with Tim Modise. But first, Faith Mangope has the latest news.
Thanks, Tim. Of course, these are your top stories at this hour. Polokwane residents say they won't vote if those accused of murdering Tito Mkhwebane don't stay behind bars. 3 more teenagers linked to the crime have been arrested, and police say 1 girl and 8 boys are now in custody. Residents have been marching angry at his mother. ENCA's Lundugutle Kulu has got the story.
These streets have been shut down by those calling for justice for Tito Mkhwebane. He was murdered, allegedly by a gang of teenagers who filmed the incident. When residents arrived at Polokwane police station, they demanded Mkhwebane's death be the last of its kind, and they are threatening to take the law into their own hands.
That is the only reason they give. The moment Mapolisa Wapalela will respond in time, community will start to fill that space.
Please, I will not wait for SAPS.
Police are promising to respond to the demands. They also had this update for the crowd.
9 suspects that have been arrested that are, until and up to thus far, busy linked with the alleged crime being committed.
But organizers of the march say arrests aren't enough. They're threatening to lobby for boycotting elections if the suspects don't remain in jail.
We therefore embark on availing ourselves, on not availing ourselves as youth of Limpopo to the voting stations till we have a clear consensus of the direction of the case and the perpetrators involved are and remain in jail.
Mkhwebane will be laid to rest on Saturday. Lindoguhle Kulu, Polokwane.
Ex-National Police Commissioner Ramaphosa blames his arrest on Robert McBride, saying the former IPID boss is trying to score points. Patlane appeared in the Johannesburg Commercial Crimes Court on fraud and corruption charges. He and other senior officers were nabbed for their alleged role in a suspect tender to install sirens and police vehicles. ENCA's Liranzo Temba has got the story.
This former top cop is in a tight spot. Once again. This time, Khomotso Patlane is charged for his alleged role in an 86 million rand tender to install blue lights. He's joined in the dock by the police's head of procurement, Ravi Pillay.
In an affidavit, Patlane protests his innocence. He says his arrest is nothing but an irrational setup aimed to humiliate and cause sensation.
He says the timing of his arrest is suspect and is convinced is aimed at bolstering former IPID head Robert McBride's image as a corruption buster. McBride's contract came to an end on Thursday, but he's challenging this in court, which is yet to make a ruling. In a statement, Patlane says it's clear McBride wants to use this case to get his job back. He claims it's in fact McBride who is corrupt.
It really has nothing to do with making McBride look good. It's an investigation. We applied for warrants of arrest. We submitted a docket for perusal by the prosecutors, and based on the evidence that they were able to see, they decided who should be brought before a court.
The pair have been granted 20,000 rand bail each. Other high-ranking officers, including former Gauteng Police Commissioner Deliwe Delanga, as well as an official for the service provider, will answer to the same corruption charges later this month.
7. That's the number of people nabbed for the multi-million rand blue lights tender. And according to police watchdog IPID, they say as they start to connect the dots, more arrests could follow. Laranzo Temba, Johannesburg.
SAA is blaming its systems for not realizing a pilot had lied about its qualifications. This comes to light that William Shand has flown aircrafts for more than 20 years without the proper certification. Officials made the discovery after probing an incident which occurred on a flight to Frankfurt. Shand apparently declined promotion because he would have to submit his airline transport pilot license. The airline now wants to recoup millions paid to him.
And this is the one issue that we are able to pick up as the vulnerability in the system. It's a case, if you like, of a good faith being taken for a ride, where there was an expectation, as it happened previously with every other pilot, for them to submit their qualifications after they have gone through examination with the regulator. So we have changed the processes and we have tightened the system. What will now happen going forward? The airline will take the responsibility of receiving whatever documentation from the pilots, but the airline will now carry the responsibility of doing the verification with the regulator and not take a mere say-so by the pilots.
Well, that's it from me. More news at 9 with Tony Ndoro. But Tim, it's over to you.
And thank you very much, House Faith. Thanks very much for the news. The Public Protector Busisiswe Mkhwebane has named and shamed Police Minister Bheki Cele, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni and President Cyril Ramaphosa as among those who disregarded her remedial actions. She accused over 50 government institutions of failing to implement her actions. What does this mean, and will the public still have faith in her office, and can the situation be remedied? I'm joined by the Deputy Public Protector, Mr. Kevin Sfiso Malunga, who's with me here, and I appreciate your time, Kevin. The step that the Office of the Public Protector took to go out on a naming and shaming campaign, what informed that?
Tim, this is long overdue. The impact is largely upon the quality of South Africa's constitutional democracy. These institutions were created so that there cannot be government impunity, the impunity of the state. You know, you have all over the African continent this big man syndrome where government does what it likes, tramples on citizens, the most vulnerable. Now, these were created so that this doesn't happen in South Africa, right? So that the last time I was here, I spoke about Gogo Dlamini, right? That vulnerable Gogo who has nothing can take on the president of the country if the president has done wrong. So that is what this is about. So in terms of the impact is upon you and me, who are citizens of this country, who pay taxes on this country. Because remember, the institution, the role of the public protector is to investigate any alleged impropriety by state organs. And we mentioned yesterday 1,000 state organs fall under the jurisdiction of the public protector. From the president himself right at the top to the smallest state organ there is out there. State-owned enterprises, statutory bodies, universities, and you name it. So we named about 38 departments yesterday which have not implemented the remedial action of the public protector, or which have not followed the proper legal process, especially in challenging it. They're fully entitled to challenge it in terms of the courts, and that's what the Constitutional Court said in the EFF versus Speaker judgment. But there are some who simply fold their hands. You'll know that in terms of the law, it is unlawful to insult the public protector or the deputy public protector. Ironically, you can insult the president in South Africa, but you can't insult the public protector or the deputy public protector. Partly, these were the checks and balances that were created so that there is that culture of accountability. So if people just do what they like, it means that these checks and balances will start failing, and we descend into a culture of impunity. Remember, for a very long time, when the ratings agencies were speaking about when there was the threat of junk status and there was all that excitement. The saving grace a number of the times was the fact that they said, no, South Africa has strong institutions, strong accountability mechanisms. So that's really up to the public. I think what I'd ask is the public that the public assists us, and that civil society and normal.
Let me find out something here. I mean, you mentioned 38 departments and the offices, right? And top people, including the president. Would those be the only ones where remedial action has not been taken, or the only ones that were disregarded?
Well, those are the most prominent, if I can put it that way, the most visible, and in terms of we've had about 21 out of about 70 reports being implemented over the past 2 years or so. But remember, there's a lot going on in the provinces. So what I'd obviously have to check is with our provincial offices as well to say, look, what's going on. But generally, this is what I can say are the most visible, the punchlines. We mentioned this, the city of Tshwane, University of Limpopo, for example, with rolling out a medical degree irregularly, and that was not picked up by the public. That's big. In other words, you have an official receiving a payment into his bank account. You can't have that culture seeping into...
And some of the cases go back to 2011. I noticed there's one of pensioners in the Vembe district, for instance, that approached you about 7 years ago and seeking remedial action, which you did suggest what should happen. But up to now, their matter has still not been resolved, and I read that the finance department is saying that they should be happy that they're receiving state pensions anyway, even though they appear to have lost what they had saved for their pensions.
Yes, that was a very reckless statement from the Treasury Department. Some of these people were senior government officials in the old Vembe homeland. So what then happened was there was a privatization of their pension fund. And in the process, they lost in the process with the government employees' pension fund, they lost their pension. So some of those people have to get into the social grant line. Imagine you're a former director general, you now have to...
The retirement benefits that they probably contributed to, they have now
wiped out.
And they're told they should wait rather for the state pension.
And the Republic of South Africa, as you know, the Republic of South Africa that took effect in 1994 is a successor in title of all the various units. So whether it's the vendor pension fund or people who are in the CISCI, we basically deal with all the issues. Sometimes you find a teacher who used to teach somewhere in Transkei who wants their pension. And you then have to calculate their pension, whether they were contributing pension in 1974, for example. And we are really there for that vulnerable person.
And of course, as the Office of the Public Protector, you invest a lot of time and resources investigating these matters, right? But when they go on being disregarded by officials who should know, what recourse do you have? You have to go to court as opposed to enforce that. But if you get ignored, what happens then?
Well, look, the process is very litigious, and I think the sad part is that a lot of these officials, including ministers, are using taxpayer resources to challenge this, sometimes frivolously, sometimes justifiably. What we're saying is, if you're doing it, do it properly. Don't just either fold your arms or be rude or just, have this I don't care attitude. And I think a lot right now, especially I'm seeing towards elections, a lot of politicians are playing to their base. They are upping the ante. I saw Bheki Cele saying, "Public protect you, papa." You don't say things like that.
Oh,
he said that today.
Okay.
You don't say things like that. That's very unprofessional. We are a professional office. We work on we're an evidence-based institution.
And of course, now that you mentioned the Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, there's a specific matter that you wanted him to take care of. It's got to do with whistleblowing.
Yes.
Yeah, that those people were not placed under any witness protection program whatsoever.
Yes.
What's the story then?
You remember there was the assassination of Sindiso Makaka.
Yes.
In Mzumkhulu. And the people that we wrote a report in whose favor we wrote a report are whistleblowers in that matter. And generally, we find that in those kind of, especially KZN, whistleblowers there's that culture of assassinations. We investigated Cleveland's and that particular matter. So what we're just asking is for the police minister to protect these individuals.
And talking about the police and the minister, when it comes to an example, the Senzo Meyiwa case, is it a case that can be reported to the public protector?
Well, any form of undue delay by a state organ and a failure...
Well, what's your view, anyway, of that?
Well, that's a terrible travesty of justice, when people were all sitting in a room and no one can even interview one of them to say, what did you see? I mean, that's just hopeless, you know. I think the investigation team probably needs to be replaced and a better, more competent team found.
Was this matter ever reported to yourself?
I would have to check with our KwaZulu-Natal offices. Remember, we're spread throughout the country. Normally, if someone asks me, is there something happening in Northern Cape, I have to pick up the phone and say,
check. Now, there's another matter of budgets, of resources, right? Yes, especially when it comes to going to the courts. The public protector mentioned that the office has only 4 million rands to defend or take certain matters to court for enforcement. Just tell me about the role of the finances.
Yes, absolutely.
Ensure that you do your work effectively.
Yes, in fact, we were created to circumvent that same issue that you're talking about, of litigation being expensive. Tim, if you wanted to sue ENCA, you would probably do so for 3-4 days a week, and you'd grow tired.
Run out of cash.
Yeah. Exactly. It applies to all of us, salaried people.
Yeah.
It's highly expensive. So the same with these reviews. They cost a lot of money, and we don't have a huge budget. We've largely been punching up above our weight in the sense that we've really been throwing knockout punches. But we have a nice sort of national spread, but we don't have those kind of resources. And I think that's where the officials are abusing the process, in the sense that they willy-nilly abuse state resources because they can litigate. They don't litigate using their own funds. They use
the public money, the taxpayers' money.
Yes,
but now you have already mentioned the departments concerned and the state organs concerned. What are you hoping to achieve? Have you had any useful, positive response from some of them?
Well, I think...
What's going to be the next step?
I'm going to be a bit controversial and I say, look, the president himself met with the public protector a few weeks ago concerning the Bosasa issue, and was very polite and kind and cooperative, right? Now, if the president of the country, and the former president as well, we investigated him on Kandla. I was already in the system.
Yeah.
And if we can investigate presidents, and they can comply with our rulings and findings, who is everybody else? So there's got to be that culture of accountability from public officials. And the impact on the quality of life, whether it's someone complaining about potholes or complaining about tenders that are not properly awarded, is really about the quality of government in South Africa and the quality of South Africa's democracy. So I think people should think about that in the sense that, going ahead, do you want to be a Zimbabwe or other countries that I won't mention, where people just start worshipping leaders and things fall apart because people feel that they account to no one?
Well, the institution is there. I think that's the message. Citizens should use it and expect and demand that whatever recommendations, remedial actions that you recommend get implemented by the officials concerned. Kevin Sfiso Malunga, thank you very much for having been my guest. I appreciate your time. Well, there you are, the public protector on the warpath against those who are not complying with the remedial recommendations. We're asking, why is Parliament so intent on getting rid of Robert McBride? Up next, we'll be speaking to his lawyer.